Terrified is an Argentine paranormal horror film exclusive to Shudder that was written and directed by Damian Raguna. The film stars Maximiliano Gioni, Norberto Gonzalo, Elvira Oneto, George L. Lewis, Giulietta Valina, and Damien Salomon. Terribly sorry for butchering all of those names apart from George L. Lewis. Anyway, let's move on to the review. Terrified, it lives up to the name. This movie, in certain scenes, will terrify you. The film focuses on this one street, this suburban area in Buenos Aires. As this street becomes haunted, these different neighbours all have these very strange paranormal activity, like events happening to each of them. There's a brutal attack, there's an odd accidental death, and one man is stalked by a large, lanky, naked, pale guy under his bed. Honestly, the scenes with that will have you terrified. Also, shout out to Egg Lotion, who commented earlier saying consider reviewing Terrified. It's also on Shudder. Thanks for bringing this film to my attention, because I really did enjoy it. The film really does have really good pacing. It starts off with a heck of a bang. If you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it doesn't really let up from there. There maybe is a little lull just before the midpoint of the film, where the paranormal investigators all come together into this film. But it is needed to get a sense of each one of them, who they are and why they are coming here, and why all these sort of coincidences are happening, and why these four are being brought together to investigate this. And it might slow things down a little bit, yet it is necessary to keep the movie going forward. I also really like the dynamic between the investigators, each one of them coming at these paranormal things from a different direction, and right in the middle of it you have this police officer who's going to retire soon, who's just your normal everyday bloke. He's the realistic character in here. He acts the way a normal person would act in a situation like this. While everyone else is wanting to dive headfirst into the paranormal things and take a look under every bed and every cupboard and stuff like that, he just wants to get the hell out of there, and it makes him really relatable. The acting from the main cast as well is pretty spot on, each one of them bringing across a really believable performance, and the body actors of some of the creatures in here also do a really awesome job. Speaking of creatures, there is some fantastic practical effects in here, some of the suits and just the creature design. I mean, there's nothing too original, too crazy and out there, but what is used, the effects look really good. They're really brutal, really visceral. They seem realistic, and yeah, they just bring across this sense of dread and terror that was really needed for the film. There is odd little bits of CGI here or there, but it's never too much to really take you out of it. But those practical effects really do hit home hard, and some of the scares that were used with them were very well crafted. I also have to mention how great the sound design was in this film. As we all know, sound design is so important to any film, but even more so in the horror genre, where you really need it to craft those great scares. It was great in the scary moments, but for one character in particular who has a coagulation problem, sorry I struggle saying that, when he's stressed out, when he's put in these crazy situations, the sound design actually goes with his heartbeat, and it's muffled and it's bassy, and you know, it goes fast, it slows down, and it shows you how much this actually affects him, not just the actual scary shit that's happening, but his medical condition. And I thought that was done really well. And I want to talk about scares for a minute, because look, I'm someone who doesn't scare easily when it comes to horror films, and I'm not saying this to sound hard, because if I wanted to sound hard I wouldn't be telling you all that I jumped at least 3 times during this film. My fiance was actually lying beside me while I was watching it with my headphones on, and I actually grabbed her a couple of times, and she was like, holy shit, is that film scary? And I was like, yeah, it's pretty scary. So yeah, this film did make me jump about 3 times, proper good jumps as well, not like cheap shitty jump scares. So yeah, I really have to commend it for that. It didn't stick with me too long after watching the film though. It didn't keep me up at night or anything like that, but while you're watching it, it will give you a nice jumpy experience. So if you're watching it with a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whoever, and you want to chuck on a nice popcorn horror that's going to freak you out a little bit during its runtime, then chuck it on. Honestly, I do recommend it. And there are certain parts of this film where it's just non-stop barrage of scare after scare, and the creepy set pieces that come into play are just really well crafted and really well thought out. And yes, there are some little tropey parts in here, but they do play with the tropes and twist them a little bit. So it does keep it fresh and keep it new, and it definitely keeps you on your toes. What I really liked about the film as well is they never outright explained everything. We never got that Google sequence where the protagonists look up what they're talking about. They were using all these different weird techniques, but they never overly explained them, and it gave you that fear of the unknown. We never fully knew what we were dealing with, and I really liked that. The director, the writer, Damien, I think his name was, he really played with the fear of the unknown, and that's where all the best horror comes from. There are some like dark comedic moments in here as well. Some of the scenes, there was one scene in particular, I won't say what it is because I don't want to spoil anything, but where like a creature of someone appears and like bangs against something, and it just looked kind of goofy. I don't know if they were trying to make it look goofy, but yeah, I think they were. Like, there was a few scenes where it will give you a wee laugh, and I think that was just it being well written to the point where these people were quite relatable and realistic and just funny. Some of them were just funny unintentionally, and yeah, it was pretty good. Sometimes it did lean into cheesy category, but never too much that it would take you out of the film. One thing I do want to say though, which was a pretty big negative for me, is what I thought was a pretty big negative, is once the film accomplishes all of these scares, feels like it didn't know how to end. Like the film just kind of flopped in on itself at the very end. But in saying this though, I could almost forgive it for that, because pretty much spot on perfect if you're just looking for a good creepy horror. So yeah, it's kind of unsatisfying near the end. They do go, and I think that was just a product of not knowing where to take it. In saying this though, the direction was great. Some of the cinematography used was brilliant. There's a lot of Dutch tilts in certain areas to show how crazy one certain character is going, and there's other shots that keep you in close real tight when you don't want to be. The director will not let you go, and then other ones where he pulls back and puts everything on show, just show you the sheer immense scale of what these paranormal beings can do and how brutal it actually is. So in the end, I still really enjoyed Terrified, even though it stumbled over the finish line at the very end. But with all that said and done, I'm going to give Terrified a 3.5 out of 5 rating. Let me know what you made of Terrified in the comment section down below, and also comment any other films that you want me to review here on the channel. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like, and if you haven't already, then subscribe to join the club. As always, thanks very much for watching, and good night.